Hey, we're back here at Scan Pro Audio, and I've got Mark from Novation with us, and the new Launchpad Pro.
Yes.
This is the Mark III?
Yeah, it's a Mark III. So recently we've obviously celebrated the fact that Launchpad is now 10 years old. Can you believe it? 10 years old. Yeah, 10 years old already. So we recently launched the Launchpad X. We had the Mini Mark III, and we felt it was time to bring the Pro up to date. So we've added a ton of new features to the Pro. So yeah, exciting times.
The first thing that we can really notice is the buttons have had a significant redesign on this, haven't they?
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, those that are familiar with Launchpad, obviously, a lot of the session control functions are all there from before.
Yeah.
But as you said, yeah, there's a ton of new features around the outside, which we'll get into. But most notably, I think the biggest introductions that we brought in is a powerful 4-track sequencer, which is great for sequencing not only with Ableton Live, which we'll demonstrate in a bit, but also all of your external hardware as well. But we've got an intuitive...
And without the computer?
Yeah, without a computer. So we have 2 MIDI outputs, and there's a MIDI through as well.
Yep. So
you can literally, shut that, and for those guys that are into the hardware, can literally sequence everything, in their studio or on stage. So
fantastic.
Yeah, but along with that as well, we've added an intuitive chord mode, which is fantastic. We'll show that off later. There's also custom modes and just a wealth of customizable functions in the note mode as well.
So you've got Ableton loaded up
Yep.
here and sort of set up with it. Obviously, it's not in the normal session view.
Yep.
So, because the lights are obviously in a much different configuration here.
Yeah.
So what have you got here to start with then?
Well, so at the moment we're just in the note mode, which generally is you kind of plug it in. This is kind of the view that you'll get. It automatically syncs to Ableton Live if you're using Ableton Live. But obviously with the custom modes as well, you can actually use it with any software as well. And there are ways of setting it up with any DAW as well. But I think the first thing we'll do is we'll look at that new sequencer mode. So if I basically press sequence, we can see at the bottom that we've got 4 completely independent sequences. So these can be running different pattern settings, different velocity settings, note values, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Completely independent. So you can customize the settings if you hold Shift, go to sequencer. We can see a ton of settings for the sequencer. So we can even decide what MIDI channel that's sending out on for that sequence. So we can sequence completely different hardware from one to another, but also we can change the layout of this view as well. But we'll sequence some drums from Ableton Live, and we'll get cracking.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to dive out and I'll leave you to it, and then I'll come back when I've got some half-decent questions.
Lovely,
nice
cool,
one.
Excellent. So yeah, we're going to just dive into the sequencer real quick. So as we said just a minute ago, we can basically tailor the way that we want the sequencer to look. So if we hold Shift and sequencer, we can see that up on the top right here, we can actually choose between like a drum layout or a scaled keyboard layout, or a chromatic keyboard layout. So at the moment, we're going to be sequencing and using drums from Ableton Live. But as we pointed out earlier, this is completely standalone at the moment. So although we're triggering sounds from Ableton Live, we're not actually printing any note data into it. So if we just jump back into the sequencer itself, you can see that if I hit play, we can see the playhead running through of our 32-step sequence. And we can see below, we've got like a little play area. So we can trigger our drums here, and there's 2 ways that you can kind of put drums into the sequence. We can just press and hold the note and then place that into the sequence. Or if we want to, we can actually find a sound that, like a hat sound, and perhaps kind of hit record and just kind of tap that in. So there's 2 different ways of doing it. Obviously, once when you're placing notes into the sequence, that's at full velocity. If we're playing them in live, it's tracking how hard we're hitting the pad, so it's velocity sensitive. So what we're going to do is just populate this sequence up a little bit more and just put our hats in there. And also, let's find a clap, and we'll put that on the second kick drum there. So you can see with the sequencer, it's just really easy, a matter of just turning on lights pretty much and just building up your drum sounds and layers. But there's a ton of different settings in the sequencer itself. So for example, we have velocity. So we can actually choose per step the velocity value. So these hats that are hitting here, we can actually dial in a little bit of velocity and have a sort of more human played feel to them. So for example, if we just sort of lower these and stagger them, And what we can do as well is make use of the duplicate button. So I have a duplicate button here where I can copy all of this information and actually place it in other steps on the sequence. So we're just going to copy these out. Actually, we'll copy this one over here as well, just to get a bit of continuity in the sequence. And you can see with the hats now, we've got this kind of gradual kind of velocity curve on them as well. So velocity is a really, really cool setting, and there are tons of different sequencer settings as well. So once we've created a sequence, we can jump into something called patterns. Now, people that are familiar with our circuit series of hardware will notice the pattern chaining is becoming a bit of a theme. So we kind of extended that a bit on Launchpad Pro Mark III. So at the moment, we've got this pattern here, which we've just created, which is one 32-step sequence. Now, if I go to this new pattern and then go back into the steps view, we can see that there's no note information in there. It's completely blank. So this is a new 32-step sequence. So maybe I want to go out to patterns again, use that duplicate feature and duplicate this one here out into this one here as well. And we've basically got two of the same pattern. So if we go into this second one here, into the steps, we can see that it's exactly the same drum beat as we had. Now, maybe what we can do here is create a different variation. So there's my kick drum there. And if I press and hold the kick drum, the steps view will tell me where those are located in the sequence, and I can actually just remove those, and then we've created a complete variation there in the sequence. So with patterns now, if I jump back out, we've got two different sequences. So what we can do is actually chain those together now. So if I press and hold the first one and link it to the second one, we've got essentially a 64-step sequence, which is going to, elongate our song project. And together with patterns, we can chain up to 8 different 32-step sequences together in a row. And then essentially that creates a longer sequence of events. Together with patterns, we have something called scenes as well. So at the bottom here, we've got a row of scenes. So scenes are a collection of these patterns. So at the moment, if I hold scene 1, that's going to launch essentially the first pattern and sequence. But I can say, like in this first scene, I want to, chain 4 together here, and I want to chain 4 together here, and so on. And then I can create a different scene, and they'll actually play sequentially in order. So you can see how we can pretty much build a complete sort of song structure in sequences and patterns and stuff as well. It's really, really intuitive and powerful.
Okay, so that was really interesting. And of course, all of that was actually happening on the Launchpad itself. We're not even running anything in Ableton.
Yeah, so it's basically all sequencing on the hardware. Although the sounds are coming from Ableton, we're just sequencing on the hardware there and just literally building up sequences and patterns.
And obviously the drums that you were triggering were the drum rack itself, so the layout was exactly the same as a standard drum rack.
Yeah, and within that as well, you can actually use the octave buttons as well to octave up and down. So you'll move up and down the drum rack within Ableton Live as well, and play the sounds perhaps on a separate bank. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really easy just to use steps and patterns to build up a song structure. And one of the really good things as well is, like, I'm an Ableton Live user. I'm sure a lot of people out there are Ableton Live users as well. And we've added something that is really, really cool. So we've got something called print clip, which basically means that all of this, drum information, note information, and velocity settings, we can now press print to clip. And then what that'll do is actually print it into a clip slot for us.
Wow.
Although that's printed it onto a different channel for me.
You've not even had to run the sequencer through and it will record it down. That's just literally appeared into...
And that for me is great. So you're jamming ideas, whether that's drums, whether it's pitched instruments, your plugins or anything like that. And then you come up with a great song structure, melody, drums, and you can literally just hit print to clip and it'll go straight in. And even in fact, when you're in session view, you can see that it's actually printed it into a different channel for me, not where I wanted it. But you can actually select where you want that placed and then hit print to clip and it'll just place it into that clip view for you.
Right.
Really, really powerful. Yeah, that's essentially the 4-track sequencer. Like I said, it's 4 independent sequencers that we have going. But additionally, we've also included something called chord mode, which for a layman like me that has very little music theory, I think is really, really intuitive and really, really powerful as well.
And again, this is running on the Launchpad,
Yep.
and it's independent of
Yep.
Ableton or doing anything in Ableton. It's just appearing
Yep.
as MIDI notes.
Yeah, completely separate. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go back to the session view at the moment. We're going to turn off record arm on the drums. And if I hold record arm and I go to keys, we just basically tell that's what we want to play. Go into chord mode. We're actually using a piece of software that you get free in the box, which is Addictive Keys, to trigger the sounds in live. So it's a plugin within Ableton Live.
Yep.
But essentially, we can jump into the chord mode now and play what would be really complex chords for perhaps someone that doesn't understand a lot of music theory, and just play chords, find chords, use the chord bank as well, which we'll show in a second, and just develop melodic ideas and chord progressions, and then use that print to clip function and just send it into Ableton Live. So
Right,
we can take a little look at that.
Yeah, totally. I'll leave you to it again, and then I'll come back when I've got some more stuff I want
Great.
to ask you. All right.
Excellent. Yeah. So we just went into session there, hit record arm, and we just record on the keys channel, which is running Addictive Keys. We go into chord mode and we get, again, what doesn't look like a familiar view, but essentially what we've got is keys in your chosen scale. So again, we said there's a lot of customization in the sequencer, but with the chord mode, we can actually choose what scale we want to play in. So at the moment, we're just in a minor scale. So if I was to press and hold, say, the first 3 pads, you can see it's playing a triad, which is really, really good. And on the orange pads here, we have a range of chords which are relative to your scale. They're actually inverted so that when you're using them, they actually kind of, they can be used and they make, harmonic sense, essentially. So we can easily create a chord, and just moving up, we can also layer chords as well and make these kind of rich chords as well. But if we jump up the pads themselves, we can find chord progressions, and if we actually find a chord that we really like, I can save them into something called the chord bank. So on the right hand side here, we've got a ton of sort of white pads that we can essentially say, right, that's a chord that I want. I'm going to save it into the chord bank. Now we can trigger pretty much one note chords. So we can say, right, okay, I like this chord, I'm going to save that one into the chord bank. This one as well. So with our chord bank there, we've got completely one-shot chords, which I think is just absolutely amazing. It's so intuitive. Now, if we want to, and we want to add additional notes to the chords as well, we can see the notes that we're playing in the chord, but we can also add up to 8 notes in a chord as well. So we just added to that chord that we've got in the chord bank. Really, really good, really fun, really intuitive. And again, these things would be really, really hard to play on a standard keyboard if you didn't have, music knowledge or theory. So it kind of breaks those barriers and that mold and allows you to get your ideas down. And as well, we've also got sustain as well. So much like a piano with a sustain pedal, we can sustain that chord as well. So chord mode in itself is just wonderful, fascinating, and allows you to add, melodic ideas to your project.
Okay, awesome. This is really sort of intuitive, and the chord bank on the right, just to be able to trigger them off.
Yeah.
What are we actually looking at here, though? So when you're pressing a key down and they're showing up red, what are we actually seeing?
So essentially, we're if we head up here. So one of the things that we've always had with Launchpad is the ability to kind of within each kind of note mode, if we hold shift and note, we can actually change the root notes and the scale that you're actually working in. So at the moment we're in a minor.
Yeah.
We can check to like a major, or there's 16 different scale types.
Yeah.
So essentially what you're looking at in the chord mode is notes that are within that scale, but then kind of essentially grouped together that allow you to play chords without having theory, having knowledge, or the stretching across a
right. So it's going
keyboard.
up the keyboard as you go
that's
up
right.
on the Launchpad.
And just pressing 3 in a row gives you a triad, which is just fantastic. And then we can add to that as well. Now the other really good thing as well, we have chord lock as well. So much like someone who's more fluent on a keyboard may want to add additional notes over the top of the chord being held itself. So you have something where you can hold chord lock as well. So you noticed before when I was adding chords, they turn red. So I can add notes to this chord.
Yeah.
But if I was to play something over the top, I couldn't, freestyle over the top of that because I'd be adding notes to the chord. One thing you can do is you can have chord lock. So turn that on, and you can play over the top of your chord. So,
and of course you can find an extra note to add in.
Exactly.
And then decide to commit it to it.
Exactly.
Or save it in a new location. So
in a new chord bank, because you've got tons of chord bank over on the right hand side. Definitely worth mentioning the note mode, because note mode itself comes with a ton of customizable feature, which kind of allows you to set up the way that you would, use something in chord mode or the sequencer itself. So, let's take a look at note mode. Generally, those that have used Launchpad in the past, whether it be the Launchpad X or the previous models of the Launchpad Pro, you'll be familiar with the note mode layout. So essentially what we've got here is a keyboard laid out in the scale of our choosing. So the purple pads actually represent the root note. So at the moment we're in the key of C, and all of the blue pads represent the other notes in the chosen scale. All of the unlit pads are the notes that are not in the scale. So what Launchpad Pro is basically doing is saying if you press all of these pads, you can never be out of key, which is really, really handy and helpful. But if you jump into Shift and Note, you can actually see a wealth of customization for the note mode. So at the moment we can see the root note is C, but if we want to change that to a D, we can change the root note, come out of the sequencer, out of the note mode itself. Now our root note is D. So we jump back into the note settings itself, and we can see that there's a load of other things that we can customize as well. So for example, in the note view itself, we have all the notes that are not in the chosen scale. But if we go back into note itself, we can actually turn on scale mode. And then what scale mode will do is, if we come back out into note mode, it's actually taken away all of those unlit pads. So I can never ever hit a duff note, which is really, really powerful. Go back into note mode. We can also change the MIDI channel as well. So as we said earlier, obviously we can sequence or play any of our external hardware via the MIDI output. But what this will do is actually, you can choose, the scale or root note that you want to play your hardware in. So if you've got, external synthesizers, anything like that, you can play them in the scale and root note of your choosing. So note mode in itself is really, really powerful.
That was really, really nice. And it's easy to swap between the keys, as you've just sort of shown there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what about if I wanted to change the scale though? So how would that work?
Yeah, so of course you go back into note mode. We showed that you can change the root note and everything as well, but we've got 16 different scale types. And as I kind of move through these, we can see that the keyboard area at the top here is just showing me.
Right. So it's actually giving you an indicator.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's showing me that scale. So, we stick in a minor or major scale, and just turning the scale mode on and off then snaps, the pads into place, so you can just never play out of key. It's wonderful. And obviously that's setting, the scale type is also setting that over the sequencer as well. So it's worth noting that when we go into sequencer, we can actually change the view from like drums into a scaled keyboard, and it's going to snap to this scale. So really, really powerful mode.
And again, it's standalone. This is all in here. We're not. It's the fact that we're connected to Ableton. Yeah. It's just working as a sound source in this instance.
So we could simply hit record, give ourselves a count in, record in, a bass, and then we are just literally taking the sounds from a plugin in Ableton Live, but it's all on the hardware itself. And then when we're happy with something, we can just print to clip. Really, really quick and easy.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so another one of the new buttons that I've spotted here is fix length.
Yes.
Where, this wasn't on the previous one, was it?
No. This is really, really good. It's certainly for people that use Ableton Live, and you're going to want to build your sessions up quickly. So, we've showed the sequencer, we've showed the note mode, we've showed also the chord mode as well.
Yeah.
But I think for workflow tips and stuff like that, we've added a few features around the outside as well. So, for example, we've got, we jump to this. We've got a bass sound loaded there as well. So if we just jump to session mode, hold session record, we can choose the channel that we want to record. So we record our bass channel.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, you spotted fixed length. Really good function, really good feature, but the ability to set the amount of time that you want to record for. So be it in bars, bar length. So at the moment we're set to record for 1 bar. We can set that to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just by holding fixed length and then selecting that amount of time. So for example, we're just going to hit a 2 bar here, and we can see that it's record armed and ready on this channel, and we can select a clip we want to record in. And rather quickly, if I jump back to the note mode, I can input all of the notes of our bass. So we're just going to hit record. We get a count in. And you can see straight away that the record button just stopped because I told it that fixed length, I want to record for 2 bars.
And you've not had to touch the computer in all of this. You've not had to set your left and right pointers. It's just purely off that. Although now we are working with Ableton.
Yeah, we're working with Ableton. We said, look, we want to record for 2 bars length. It's recording and it's transferred all that note information straight into Ableton Live. Now, to correct any sloppy playing, we can of course use the quantize function. I can hit quantize and it will now snap all of those to the grid. Or if I wanted to, I can hold shift as well and just add in record quantize. So as well as that, familiar people that have used Launchpad Pro in the past will know that you can duplicate and double that clip as well to create sort of variations and extended versions. Double will allow you to double it from 2 bar to 4 bar, 4 bar to 8 bar. So lots of workflow stuff as well. And we've also added the capture MIDI function as well, which I think is an outstanding thing in Ableton Live, which will essentially, it's always recording information that's put into it. Although you're not hitting record, you can literally hold capture MIDI and it will just recall any of that note data you put in. So really good, quick workflow functions.
That's fantastic. So there's loads here that really, it's just taking you away from the computer again. You're just into something where you're just intuitively kind of jamming stuff down very, very quickly, especially if you've already got some sort of sound banks and stuff set up in Ableton.
And it's I think the goal with Launchpad, and certainly Launchpad Pro takes you from that Launchpad performer into Launchpad producer and music producer. So
definitely, it's so much just to get a riff together and to be able to put that down, and it's not thinking about the live performance or doing this. It's exactly that way.
Yeah, it takes you into music production realms, which is really good, but also breaks down those barriers because, everyone has musical ideas, but they don't have the theory to back that up.
Yeah.
So we're constantly trying to help and break down barriers for people. So adding chord modes and sequences and stuff as well is really, really powerful.
Cool. So I think one other thing we've seen this with Ableton now.
Yeah.
But should we plug some other stuff in?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Absolutely. Let's break down some hardware, and we've got some really cool functions on the sequencer that we can show off.
Cool. Right. We'll go and find that, and then we'll come back.